This year marks the 40th anniversary of Shelley-Anne Bacsu's disappearance after she called her mother Muriel around 8 p.m. on the evening of May 3, 1983, to tell her that she would come home soon. But she never did. Today, the case files fill 147 baker's boxes, and her photo smiles at drivers along Highway 16 from a billboard urging those with information to come forward. This decades-long tragedy is now one of the oldest cold cases in the province of Alberta. On Tuesday, May 3, 1983, 16-year-old Shelley-Anne Bacsu was babysitting at her boyfriend's home on Sunset Trailer Court in Hinton, Alberta. She called her mother Muriel around 8 p.m. to tell her that a friend would be picking her up and that she would be home in about 15 minutes. Muriel then received another call around 9 p.m. from Shelley-Anne's boyfriend, who told her that the friend was unable to pick her up and that he did not have a means of driving her himself. As a last resort, she began walking down Highway 16 toward her home located just off of Highway 40. Sandy and Tim Bacsu, Shelley-Anne's father and brother, immediately began driving around the area searching for her after receiving the phone call. Muriel then set out on foot. One witness claimed to have seen Shelley-Anne walking on the north side of Highway 16 heading west towards Highway 40. Two other witnesses reportedly saw someone entering a van with what might have been a British Columbia license plate. A missing persons report was eventually filed, and friends and family members joined the days-long search for Shelley-Anne. A few days later, her student union card, jacket, bra, underwear, and a library book she had checked out on the day of her disappearance were all found along Highway 40 not far from the Athabasca River. Unfortunately, forensic testing conducted on the clothing did not produce any incriminating DNA results, and no arrests were made by the RCMP during the investigation. The Bacsu family has since moved away from Hinton, but Muriel has not given up on Shelley-Anne. Though she no longer believes her daughter is still alive, she hopes that the discovery of her remains will bring her some closure. Since the 1960s, over 40 women, particularly those from the Aboriginal community, have disappeared along a stretch of Highway 16 between Prince Rupert and Prince George, British Columbia, known as the Highway of Tears. This same highway stretches east, passing several provincial parks into Jasper National Park that borders the communities of Brule, Hinton, and Catamount. Very few have been apprehended for these disappearances, and many remain unsolved. In 2005, Project E-PANA was launched in an effort to further investigate unsolved homicides and missing persons cases occurring along Highway 16. PANA is the Inuit deity that safeguarded the souls of the dead. Currently, there are 13 homicide and 5 missing persons investigations going as far back as 1969 under the purview of this task force. Bacsu is the only missing persons case in Alberta associated with the Highway of Tears. However, other disappearances have occurred since 1983 in the Hinton area, such as that of 70-year-old Stephanie Stewart from the Athabasca Fire Lookout Tower on August 26, 2006. Stewart's case also remains unsolved to this day. In 1995, Texan-born serial killer Bobby Jack Fowler was arrested and charged for the kidnapping and rape of an Oregon woman and later connected to the murder of Colleen McMillan through DNA analysis in 1974. He is also suspected for the murders of 2 other women, Gail Ways and Pamela Darlington, but his death in 2006 at Oregon State Penitentiary and lack of physical evidence has since stalled these cases. To date, investigators are uncertain as to the number of Fowler's victims, and may have potentially been involved in Bacsu's disappearance some 500 kilometers northeast from where McMillan's body was found near Lac La Hache. Others have since been arrested and convicted of murders along the Highway of Tears, including serial killer Edward Dennis Isaac, who was sentenced for the homicides of 2 Prince George women in the early 1980s. Unfortunately, Bacsu's disappearance will remain unsolved without new evidence for the foreseeable future. Albeit inconclusive, the probability that Bacsu was abducted as she was walking south along Highway 16 toward her home on Highway 40 is too great to ignore. That her belongings were found by the Athabasca River possibly suggests that her body might have been disposed of in the murky, rushing waters where all physical evidence of the crime would so readily wash away in the night. Whatever events transpired that windy May evening in 1983, Muriel Bacsu is still searching for answers, and that one day she will be able to lay Shelley-Anne to rest. Perhaps one day, with the aid of new technology, or a simple stroke of luck, new clues will surface that will lead to her discovery and closure of one of Alberta's oldest cold cases.